Welcome back, everyone, to the Wedge 52 Gridiron Podcast. I'm your host, Wedge. Today's episode will be the 10-minute report Dolphins. Please make sure you follow me right here on Spotify, as well as rate the podcast based on your experience listening up to this point, as well as check out the Instagram at Wedge 52 Gridiron. If you haven't looked at any of the other 10-minute reports that I've been posting every single day of July, go ahead and do that after this video. But for now, the 10-minute report series is where I take 20 minutes of study plus my already established knowledge to create a 10-minute podcast. With that being said, let's jump into today's episode, the 10-minute report, Miami Dolphins. Starting off, the biggest question mark for the Miami Dolphins is the health of quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. It's really make or break in terms of the outlook on their season. While if he is unhealthy, they could, go and sign someone, trade for someone, But in terms of Tua's health, last year he had two major concussions that were documented very well. There was the first one where he should not have even been put back into the game, in my opinion. But Tua's season was very seriously injury havoc last season. But he did clear the NFL and Miami Dolphins concussion protocol fully on February 1st of this year. And then this offseason, it seems like Tua has been taking a lot of preventative steps to help himself not get future concussions. He's doing as much as he can, but ultimately, you can't control the head substance and the density and, movement speed of your brain inside your skull when taking a hit. But Tua's been taking jiu-jitsu classes, as well as learning to fall, and as well as working with a trainer to do core and neck strengthening to help his head not whip around as much. Both of those concussions that he got last season were from the snapping of the neck motion, kind of, to explain that, and him hitting the back of his head on the playing surface. But if Tua is healthy, he will definitely have some weapons. Firstly, let's mention potentially the best wide receiver duo in the league. The only one that instantly comes to my mind to compete with that would be Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, or A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. But the Miami Dolphins, I think, may take the cake with Tyreek Hill, who had 1,710 receiving yards to go along with 7 touchdowns last season, and Jalen Waddle, who had 1,356 yards and 8 touchdowns last year. So between those two guys alone, they had 3,000 plus yards and 15 touchdowns, as well as Jalen Waddle had 18.1 yards per reception, which led the entire NFL in that category. So those two guys are obviously a 1-2 punch like no other. And I know they definitely caused some problems for my Ravens in the fourth quarter of that game last season. I don't want to talk about it. Moving to the backfield, they have running back Raheem Mostert, who last year had 891 rushing yards, along with 3 rushing touchdowns. I'm not sure how much of Tua's injury were due to the poor offensive line, but he was definitely under pressure quite a bit, as their offensive line is bad. Last season, they only had 2 offensive linemen close to the 100% snap counts. They had one at 100%, I believe, one at 99 point something percent. And then after that, Their next closest offensive lineman in terms of snap count percentage was 72, 70, and a 69. So that is, like I've mentioned that before in previous episodes, consistency with offensive linemen is very critical in the NFL. All 5 of those guys have to work as a unit and need to have great chemistry and unspoken, kind of the things you can't coach. Like, you kind of just have to get the feel for the guy next to you, and it's all about repetitions and, seeing every different kind of block against every scheme, over and over and over to learn when the guy next to you is going to be, stepping, when he's going to be, where his hand placement's going to be, his timing on different blocks, things like that. They all have to be able to work as a unit, not only for themselves, but that helps the quarterback know that he's going to be protected. The quarterback's going to know, what's going on in front of him, as well as the running back can kind of start to learn how his offensive linemen flow and, kind of get a feel for them and know how to not only help them out, but also know when one of their linemen is going to win a block, when one of their linemen is going to advance to the second level and kind of, make their cuts and reads based off of what they know of that, what they know from their consistent linemen and how they play. So they're definitely hoping for Terran Armstead to have a full season. Last year he played 13 games. He only allowed 1 sack and had 5 penalties. So definitely good in the games that he played. He played 13 of them, so almost a whole season. But I believe he hasn't played a full season in a couple of years. And then the Dolphins definitely noticed this issue as they signed 3 offensive linemen this offseason, as well as drafted a Michigan tackle in the 7th round of this year's draft. Moving on to their defense a little bit, they have one of the best defensive back units in the entire league. Starting off with cornerback Jalen Ramsey, who they traded a 3rd-round pick and tight end Hunter Long to the Los Angeles Rams to acquire Jalen Ramsey during this offseason. Last year, Ramsey had 88 tackles, 4 interceptions, 18 passes defensed, and 2 sacks as a Ram. So he's going to pair up and go opposite of cornerback Xavier Howard, who's been a pretty good cornerback for the Dolphins for the past couple of seasons now. Last year, I would say it was a down year for Mr. Howard, and he still had 45 tackles, 1 interception, and 12 passes defensed. So in a down year to still put up those numbers is, kind of just showing you the talent that Xavier Howard has, and now you're pairing him with Jalen Ramsey, who is, he's been at the top of the best cornerbacks list for quite some time now. And then on the back end of that, for safeties, they have Javon Holland, who last year had 96 tackles, 2 interceptions, 7 passes defensed, and 1.5 sacks. And then they just signed free agent Deshaun Elliott, who last year played for the Detroit Lions. Deshaun Elliott, the Joker, had 96 tackles, 1 interception, and 3 passes defensed for Detroit. And then their defensive line is pretty solid as well. That is mostly off of a couple guys named Jalen Phillips and Christian Wilkins. Those two have been kind of, holding down that defensive line last season. Jalen Phillips had 61 tackles, 7 sacks, and 8 tackles for a loss. And Christian Wilkins had 98 tackles, 3.5 sacks, and 16 tackles for a loss. So those two guys are definitely up there in terms of, best defensive line duo. So predict them to, have slimmer numbers again. And then they also have outside linebacker Bradley Chubb, who last year they acquired mid-season from Denver, and his stats collectively across both teams, he had 39 tackles, 8 sacks, and 5 tackles for a loss. So the defense for the front four and then the back four on that Dolphins defense are very good, as well as their wide receiver duo. So I do think the Dolphins will have a solid season. We are wrapping up my 10 minutes here, which leaves me with just the record prediction for the 2023 Miami Dolphins, where I predict that they will go 10-5. I do, however, think that the Buffalo Bills, who I predicted 10-5, will finish ahead of them. So that's all I have for the 10-minute report Dolphins. Thank you guys all for listening again. And please make sure to follow me here on Spotify, as well as on Instagram at Wedge52Gridiron. Thank you all for listening, and go Ravens.